Show me number 2, vertebrate skeleton, starting with the axial skeleton. Agnathans only have a notochord, but changing this into a gnathosome would add trunk vertebra and caudal vertebra. So regionalization going on there. And then we start to see ribs in the development of agnathans to gnathosomes. So some of them are dorsal. And then, moving from the gnathosomes into early tetrapods, we have 4 different types of vertebra. We've got the cervical vertebra, which includes the atlas and axis. We've got the trunk, we've got the sacral, and everything past the sacral is the caudal vertebra. And then we start to see a difference in centra. From the gnathosomes to early tetrapods, we have amphicoelous, which means they're both concave. We have procoelous, which is the anterior end concave, and the opocoelous, which is the posterior end concave, and this just allows for a different type of movement. And then, yes, we have vertebra, some floating, some not, into the early tetrapods, but what's interesting is this is the first occurrence of zygapophyses from the gnathosomes to the tetrapods, and this just allows the vertebrae to connect better. However, we're still not seeing a sternum until we hit the mammals and we get a sternum, and this allows some of the ribs to connect to the sternum, to the sternum and the spinal cord. However, we also see further regionalization of the vertebra. We see cervical, which includes the atlas and the axis. We've got thoracic, we've got lumbar now, which is the new one, and it allows for the sinusoidal S-curve. We've got the sacral, and then we've still got caudal, which is just the tail. And then the centra are all acoelous, which means they're flat to flat. This allows for more forward-backward movement. And the sternum, it's worth mentioning, is a chain of ossified elements. Why do we have one centrum in the tetrapods and the mammals? It's because it's better at shock absorption. It makes you less flexible, but that shock absorption is really good. Alright, let's go on to the appendicular skeleton. The agnathans have no limbs, no girdles. However, they do have this long fin, which scientists have theorized that became split. I want to say that's a bad use of the word, but split, and then these became the different girdles. In the gnathosomes, the pectoral girdle developed first, which is here attached to the skull, so it has dermal and endochondrial elements because it's attached to the skull and the spinal cord. And it's made up of just one big old bone that's attached, it's a couple bones, my bad. And then the pelvic is just one bone. However, in the transition from gnathosomes to tetrapods, we start to see more bones occurring. So we've got the ischium, the iliac, and the pelvis. I might not be pointing to the right one, but that's how it goes. And then, so in the development from the gnathosomes to the tetrapods, the pectoral girdle becomes unattached, gets attached by a muscle sling instead, and then becomes the scapulocorticoid. And then so the limbs, which are caused by the sonic hedgehog and the TBX, has the xylopodium, which is always the upper arm. We always have a tripartite arm. We've got the zygopodium, which is usually a 2-boned middle thing. And then the autopodium, which includes digits, radii, tarsals, metatarsals. That's a nice little paw for you. And then in the tetrapods to the mammals, We lose the dermal components because we lost the skull. The pectoral girdle is now unattached. It's the scapulocorticoid. However, what's majorly different between the tetrapods and the mammals is how they stood. The tetrapods had sprawling posture, which caused the forces to come up and in. However, in the mammals, their limbs got shifted under them, which caused a greater scapular prominence because all this force is being directed straight up. All right, finally the cranium. I can grab it. Agnathans have no cranium. It's just a mouth. Gnathosomes have a mini-parted skeleton, which allows for cranial kinesis. It's done in 3 parts: pro, meta, and mesokinesis. And this allows them to move their skull in such a way that they create negative pressure within their mouth, and they can suck in food. Little fishies get sucked in, they can eat them. Gnathosomes are diapsids, which means they have 2 holes, which makes them have more attachments for muscles, so they can do different things. But in the tetrapods and the mammals, we develop a couple of different things. First of all, we start to ossify the skull together, so we lose cranial kinesis. It's a 2-part skull, dipartite. It's the bottom part is attached by muscle, and since all these extra bones are no longer being used, it becomes the malleus, the anvil, and the stirrup, which are in the inner ear, and they increase the frequency range hearing of the tetrapods and the mammals. What was also developed was a secondary palate that runs through turbinates, which are little spiral bones. It looks, yeah. And they warm up air coming through. This allows the early tetrapods and the mammals to breathe while eating, or really only the mammals, to breathe while eating. And then we found cases of squamosal dentistry articulation, which means teeth, and then the presence of a hyoid bone in the mammals. And that is everything. This is 8 minutes, 10 seconds.